Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Jessica Coe, and I'll be your host today. Recently, as part of quarantine activities, I have taken on the challenge of brewing my own makgeolli. And if you don't know what that is, it's a Korean rice wine, and it's really hard to find in America, especially in the Midwest. So I was getting really sick of not being able to get it, and I just said, hey, I'm going to buy the few things I need on Amazon and just make it myself. So 9 days later, it's finally finished, and I must say that it is better than I expected and above average. I have a lovely show for you planned today. We're going to talk about the Venn diagram of a relationship. We're going to take you all the way back to statistics class there. And then next we're going to talk about like the best way to be sidekick in your relationship, or why doesn't he just know? It's a major problem that I hear among couples all the time. And then after that, we're going to be getting into the science behind lingerie. And finally, we're going to wrap up with my top 5 Netflix series to binge with your partner while in quarantine or anytime. So let's get started, and I hope you enjoy. So let's talk the Venn diagram of a relationship. This concept was actually first brought to me by my boyfriend, who said, I want us to keep our lives separate while intertwining them as part of a relationship. And when you think about it, the Venn diagram is really the idea that you and your partner should each have individual lives that connect at certain points, but not all points. For many, this concept is hard, and for some it's easy, but you should be your first priority whether you are in a relationship or not. And sometimes a person in a relationship may feel differently. Maybe it's you, maybe your partner feels this way. They feel like they should be their partner's main focus. But that's really, really toxic for a relationship. So I'm going to take you guys back to biology class. In ecosystems, we have what are called symbiotic relationships. Now, there's mutualism, the relationship where each organism in the relationship benefits. There's also commensalism. This is where one organism benefits and the other is neutral, neither benefiting or being harmed. And there's also parasitism, and this is where one of the organisms benefit while the other one is harmed. Thus, the term parasitism. Now, I want you to think about your own relationship, or imagine the type you'd like to be in, if you're not in one already. Which of these sounds the most appealing to you? I know my own answer would definitely be mutualism, and I have a feeling most of you would feel the exact same way. Relationships should be mutualistic, and there should be an equal benefit from all parties of the relationship. Not a parasitism, not even a commensalism. The most optimal relationship you can find yourself in is a relationship where both you and your partner are benefiting. And the first step to making that even relationship is learning to take care of yourself with the strengths you have and complement your partner's life where your strengths lie and theirs do not. And that being said, this is not me telling you that it's a problem. It's not problematic to ask your partner for help or to offer them your time or services. Problems arise when you begin to depend on your partner, when you become individually inept. To become an individual within a relationship, you want to start finding alternative solutions to a problem that only requires your own efforts and that you don't need to have your partner there to help you with. A good example would be those of us who don't quite cut it for the height requirements to reach the top shelf. Those people may ask their partner from time to time to reach for them or to help them reach it. But what if your partner isn't available to help? Do you simply give up and not even bother? Or do you find a ladder or climb onto the counter to reach that pesky cereal box all the way on the top? If you've answered the latter, you've already taken a step to finding your individuality in your own relationship. If you answered the former, you might want to reflect on the role you are playing in your relationship and how you can hold more of your own weight. We've talked a lot about focusing on creating a space between you and your partner, and that space that creates you as your own person as opposed to you and your partner as one. But on the other hand, we have yet to discuss the errors that arise when you focus only on yourself. This is also a major problem. And being too selfish can lead to major issues in the relationship that cause you to stop thinking about your partner and start expecting things from them without reciprocating those feelings or actions. And if both of you stop spending time together and stop doing things together, then there really is no relationship. Without interaction, there is no relationship. So although you are your own first priority, you should not be your only focus. You should have your eyes and thoughts on your partner sometimes, but it shouldn't be your primary source of thought. If you're looking to find a college that suits you, don't go chasing the dreams of your partner. Don't go to a college just because that's where your true love is going. Go to a college that suits you. And something that you guys can work out in the future is whether or not you're able to handle that long distance or just that separation. But what's important is that you're finding education for yourself. And this is just a metaphor. This works for lots of things like jobs and other opportunities, hobbies even. Finding what's best for you, whether that's being with your partner or not, you have the opportunity to work that out together. And being able to understand when your partner has their own priorities that aren't you, that are for taking care of themselves, that's okay. And as long as their priorities aren't overwhelming and destroying your relationship, there really shouldn't be any sort of negative emotions towards those hobbies or activities. You should be allowing your partner the freedom that they want, that you would want. It's kind of like the golden rule. We all learned it in kindergarten. You treat others how you yourself would want to be treated. And I think that really goes well into relationships. Not necessarily in the fact that, like last podcast, we talked about love language. Not everybody has the same way of reciprocating love, but you want to give as much as you want to get. And by being selfless in that way, it really creates more of a strong bond between you and your partner. And being independent does not mean that you're selfish. It just means that you have your own life and you are responsible for yourself. You have your things that separate you from your partner, but they don't come between you and your partner. And you are willing to be there for your partner and help them in ways that work for both of you, not just them, not just for you. And that's why I like to think of this idea as a Venn diagram, because you have in one circle, you have your life, you have in the second circle, your partner's life, and they intertwine ever so delicately in the middle. Neither one is all-consuming, neither one is completely empty of each other's lives, and they're equal on both sides. And there is no right or wrong as to how much of your life you're sharing with your partner. Like, yes, the idea is to not have your circle be completely over their circle or vice versa, but you can share a lot of your life together, and just as long as you have those, you still have a sense of individuality, you're going to have the strongest relationship because you can still pull your own weight. If there's ever, something horrible to happen, in your relationship, or if one of you were to have to fall out of the relationship or something happened to one of you, this would create a stronger sense of rebuilding a relationship or just taking care of yourself if anything were to happen. And this removes a lot of the fears that come with a relationship, because a lot of the time there's always that what if. What if they break up with me? What if they find someone else? What if something happens to them, especially if you're married or dating somebody who's sick or prone to sickness, who, maybe they have a history of finding new partners very quickly. It really takes away from those fears and that anxiety, which can put extra stress on the relationship for both of you. But it takes away from that because you feel like you can walk out okay, and you feel like you can walk out of a relationship still intact, still yourself, and you have other things to fall back on. You have hobbies to go back and do. You have friends to go back and do. And they're not things that are going to remind you. They're not things that are going to be things that you shared with your partner. It's just going to be things that are about you. And as long as you have that, it really creates a sense of responsibility, and you create your own person so that you have a stable platform to be on. Regardless of if anything happens or not, you always want to be your own person, as opposed to completely melding your relationship and becoming one person with your partner. You don't share the same life. You're not the same person. So you can share a lot of life together. You can share just a little bit of life together, whatever works for you and your partner, but it's an equal agreement of overlapping lives and overlapping circles, if you want to visualize it like the diagram, that are separate, but they also come together to create a coexisting, happy, equal, enjoyable relationship. And on top of that, it removes any pressure that you have to spend all of your free time with your partner, or they have to spend all of theirs with yours. You learn to just get into the groove of each other's lives and fit in the crooks and crevices where they're lacking and you're not, and vice versa. And this also helps you trust your partner. So take a moment to pause, reflect on how your own relationship balances out, and in the upcoming segment, think about what changes you can make to create a more mutualistic romance for you and your partner. We'll be back shortly.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
The GSMC Sex Podcast is a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet. Download the GSMC Sex Podcast podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you can find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. In our first segment, we discussed the concept of the Venn diagram of a relationship. That is the concept that each partner lives their own individualistic life while also taking part in the relationship between them where each benefit from the other equally. I've also compared this to a mutualistic relationship if you are a fan of biology and the ecosystem. So now that we understand what the Venn diagram of a relationship looks like, that is the two congruent circles that overlap evenly, we can break down how to implement the idea of this individuality into our own relationship. And as we go along and you have your hands free, as long as you have your hands free, you can even try this practice at home with a pencil or pen and paper and create your own diagram to really visualize how this mutual relationship looks. I'd even advocate that you create a diagram for what your relationship currently looks like and a second diagram for how it could improve if necessary. Either way, it's still completely reasonable for you to be able to visualize in your head, as long as it's not distracting you while you're driving, be safe, visualize in your head where you and your partner's lives fall on this pattern. There are so many categories that can set you and your partner apart from each other. And it's a good reminder that a little space to breathe is necessary in a relationship. It is good to have things that are different between you two and to share between you two, but there's nothing wrong with doing different things and having different interests, even if they don't always agree with the other's interests. It's learning to accept your partner's interests and vice versa that really create a long-lasting trust and bond. So of these categories, the first I would like to look at is friends, since this is pretty easy to visualize. The first thing to look at is, do you share your entire friend group, some of your friend group, or none at all? And all of these carry their own benefits depending on how the couples interact between their own and each other's friend groups. And if you share your entire friend group, some of the time that you spend with those shared friends should be spent without the presence of one of the partners. If you have the same friends and both of you are always together when spending time with your friend group, your shared friend group, it starts to move your friend group into the shared portion of the Venn diagram. And this makes your own relationship between you and your partner a little less intimate. And so by meeting your friends together from time to time, it's really great as long as you're balancing it out with the times where you can meet your friends individually. However, if you share some friends, but not all friends, that is, you have a portion of a friend group that both of you are equally friends with, and then you also have your own individual friends, it's good to make sure each partner has a healthy amount of friends outside that shared friend group. This gives you someone you can be close to and trust for advice and consolation should you ever should you ever face troubles in your relationship, a third-party perspective. And when you have your own individual friends, it is important that you remain either neutral or optimistic towards those friends. By creating tension between you and your partner's friends, it creates so much stress on the relationship. It creates so much stress on your partner to find middle grounds for you and their friends to meet on. It's just a giant bomb waiting to explode. So it's also important that you're spending relatively even amounts with your friends. If you spend large amounts of time out with your girls throughout the week while your partner is at home by themselves or working, it may throw off the balance of a healthy relationship and This works the same if your partner is spending a lot of time with their friends as opposed to the time they're spending with you as well. And when you have none of the same friends, this is when it becomes very important for you to be willing to be at least civil towards each other's friends. Like I mentioned with semi-shared friendships, this can cause major strain on a relationship and so many unnecessary frustrations. If you do have your own concerns about a friend of your partner's, just discuss it with them, sit them down, make it, private in your bedroom or just not when you're with your friends. Don't bring it up in front of the friends at first. Discuss it with your partner and have an open mind. And if you really need to talk to that friend, just be civil about it. Because if you're starting fights, if you're starting arguments, if you're talking poorly about your partner's friends, it can cause some confusion as to how they feel about either his friend, his or her friend, you, your relationship, or all of the above. So it can really be just a bummer on a relationship if you don't accept each other's friends. That being said, there is nothing wrong with having your partner as your best friend, but it's unhealthy if they are your only friend. And similarly with friends, your interactions with family should also be equal on both sides, or at least to the point where each of you feel both necessary and comfortable with. If your partner has a child, the child is not yours. The child will likely always aim towards your partner's side of the diagram, no matter how close you and the child get. It is important to accept this, as forcing a close relationship to your partner's family can create animosity and discomfort with both your partner and their loved ones. But on the other hand, if you show hostility towards one another's families, this can cause a great amount of concerns and stress for you or your partner, and even within the family itself, and just really not becoming of a healthy relationship. And not everyone gets along right off the bat. We all have stories of trying to get along with a partner's family and it just doesn't work out. So again, this is something that should be worked out civilly and privately, either with you and your partner or you, your partner, and their family member. You should always express respect towards their family and their time with family. Again, a part of the individual or your respect towards their individuality. Another great topic is work. Work is expected to be something unavoidable in most cases. Allowing your partner to work the hours they're required to is essential for your relationship, both financially and emotionally. And when I say required, I mean within reason. If they're working all day long every day, maybe that's something you and your partner need to sit down and work out between each other. But especially now, as a large majority of us are working from home, it may be easy to be a little bit distracted by your partner. Or maybe it may be you who is tempted to try to sway them out of working for a bit to give you a little bit of attention. Please, please, please try to overcome these temptations, because repetitive breaks from work could lead to lower work performance and crunching to meet deadlines and very unimpressed employers and bosses. So if you or your partner are working from home, really try to lay out some ground rules about, when you need to be working, and just kind of lay out a schedule when it's really important that you focus on work and nothing else, just as if you were actually in the office or at school, wherever you usually work. And for the many of us that do live together, realize that spending time in the same space but not doing the same thing is totally okay. Speaking from experience, my boyfriend and I spend hours in our studio apartment where we interact every so often, but we don't feel like we're neglecting one another when we do choose to do something by ourselves, do our own thing. Hobbies can be treated similarly, spent together or apart. Just respect your partner's time by allowing them to experience activities individually, or whether you're not prioritizing your hobbies over your relationship. Be mindful of that as well. And in order for all of this to work out, for you to be able to spend time with friends, to enjoy family, to work, to enjoy your hobbies, just have free time, to respect each other's space, it's really important. The key to this is trust. You must be willing to show your partner that you trust them while they go out to do their own activities or just while they're doing their own thing. And they should be trusting you as well. Now, hopefully, they're giving you all the essentials you need to be able to trust them. That is communication, honesty, and showing an effort to trust you while you do your own activities as well. And part of this communication is understanding that each of you will have fears, you'll have doubts, and maybe some concerns, or even conflicting interests, like things you want to do that he doesn't want to do together. And in order to do this, you have to have proper communication. And with that will come trust. Because regardless of whether or not you believe in soulmates, you shouldn't have to rely on another person to feel alive, to feel like yourself. So hopefully this gave you an idea on how to reflect on your own relationships and get an idea of what areas of your own Venn diagram could use a little bit of work. Coming up next, we're going to discuss why your partners aren't psychic and what you can do to fix that. See you after the break.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back. We just finished talking about the magical Venn diagram of a relationship, and that is the individuality that comes with a relationship and why it's important to be able to rely on yourself and not just your partner. So now we're going to go into why your partner isn't psychic, or why don't they just no. So a lot of common frustrations I see in couples is, why don't they know when I'm sad? Why don't they know that I'm angry? Or how are they seriously not able to tell that I'm upset with them? They can't tell when I need or want something. And seriously, is it that hard for them to tell I don't like this? I have heard all of those time and time again. And as much as we want to blame it on our partner, as much as we want to say that they are in the wrong and that it should be obvious what we are feeling and what we need, what we want, the truth is oftentimes it's a lack of communication. Communication. I will say it time and time again. I live by this. Communication is what is going to fix the problems of why your partner is not psychic, why they don't just know. Especially like in the last episode, I talked about love language. And most people have different love languages. So you have to actually take the time to learn and understand them. I know it can be a little bit difficult. I know reading's hard, but take some time, just look it up, look yours up. It takes a few minutes and you'll have a better understanding of your partner in no time. And I've experienced a young couple, we're talking early 20s here, who lived together and had been in an ongoing relationship for 4 or 5 years, so since high school. But neither of them ever initiated the conversations about difficulties in both their own personal lives or within their own relationships. Each of them just kept to themselves on all of the problems they had. And although I've reiterated time and time again that you should not rely on your partner as a problem solver, you should be willing and able to be open, honest, and discuss your qualms with your partner. But in this particular relationship, they had oftentimes repressed their emotions, which, in their defense, this was their tactic to keeping their own problems to themselves. And I know in a lot of societies, we're taught to keep our problems to ourselves and just to work it out on our own, to really just own up and take responsibility for any time we're not feeling good about something, for any time that we're upset. And of course, we're not supposed to take it out on our partner, but it is okay to express that you're having issues and difficulties and that you're trying to work something out, or that something between you and your partner is bothering you, or something outside of your relationship is putting pressure on you and thus affecting your mood, which then affects your relationship. But back to this couple. Instead, they were instead of expressing their emotions, they were bottling up all of their issues by not allowing themselves to express how they felt. And over time, it built up and just it came to a point where both parties were unhappy and seemingly barely knew each other at more than a surface level after years of dating. And since we are often taught that our own problems are better left unsaid, I can't help but feel that this is a common problem within relationships, and it's definitely one I've seen on multiple occasions. And in this relationship, it even got to the point where the woman would come to me in tears and asking me, why doesn't he just know? And she was practically tearing out her hair, trying to figure out how on earth he had become so insensitive towards her. And I asked her, have you ever verbally expressed that you were upset? Well, no, she admitted, but still didn't seem to understand the relationship between why she should have to communicate verbally and why he should just know. And in a perfect relationship, the one we envision when we're younger, the one we see at our wedding day, two people should simply be able to sense by the other's actions or lack of the vibe that they're giving off. They should be able to sense when something isn't right in a perfect relationship. But a perfect relationship doesn't just spring out of nowhere. It takes time, it takes work, and it takes, you guessed it, so much communication to understand each other in order to build this kind of relationship where you can just know, or you can easily get a sense of what your partner is feeling. And I had to explain to her that the reason he's incapable of analyzing her signals because he has no idea what those signals are. She's never communicated to him the way that she chose to show discontent. She had never said, I'm upset right now, while displaying those signals. And so a major problem that a lot of partners come into, a lot of relationships, they see their expressions as very obvious. Like if you're, very quiet, you're not talking a whole lot, this should very easily come off as I'm upset. But instead, the other partner may fail to see this, and because you've never expressed that you're upset while being, kind of closed off and short-worded. And they don't have anything to correlate that with. They don't have any past records of what is going on. They just think, okay, they're just not talking very much right now. It's unlike them, but they haven't said anything, so I don't think they're upset. And there are even some cases where one partner may be showing that they may be trying to show that they're uncomfortable, and the other partner may pick up on it, but they feel like they don't have the right to bring up that something is wrong. They don't feel like you and your partner have that much, them and their partner have that much communication that that it's something that should be talked about. Rather, it's taboo to talk about your problems. It shouldn't come up in a relationship. There should be no problems. And that's really not the way you shouldn't brush off problems. And that's not a good way to look at it. So by opening up to your partner, expressing how you feel, this allows them to feel, okay, it's okay to talk about feelings. It's okay to bring up problems, and problems even within the relationship, outside of the relationship. Anytime that you feel something needs to be fixed, or you feel that something's going to impact your relationship from the outside world, like you didn't get the big raise you were hoping for and it really bummed you out, and now you're going to go home and feel bad. Well, it's good to communicate that with your partner and not just keep it all to yourself, because then they can understand why you're upset, and they also know that you're not just upset with them too. So after some time, after she had come to me and I gave her some advice for talking to her boyfriend, I asked if she had begun to communicate with him, if she was being straightforward and just being, straightforward and honest about when she was feeling unhappy. And I was shocked when she declined and told me that she hadn't even tried to show. And her response was, I wish he could just read me, and that he doesn't even try. And some people aren't able to read others. They need a problem to be blatantly brought before them before they can even realize it's there. But once you start to practice this process of laying out what a problem is, they'll start to see patterns in how you act and handle the problem. This is giving them a chance to learn how to read you. And by giving them that chance, they will slowly learn what signals you're trying to send off. Even if you're not trying to send signals that you're upset or that you need something, that you need comforting, you're obviously going to show that in your expressions and just in how you act and how it differs from how you would act day to day. So once you are able to portray and express that you're feeling one way, they're going to start picking up on the way you express yourself when you are feeling upset, and how maybe they're supposed to react, whether or not they're supposed to communicate it with you. And you can just kind of start to initiate that conversation between the two of you. And there should never be any shame in bringing up problems and acknowledging that you don't have a perfect relationship, because taking the time to build a nice relationship that is comfortable for both of you takes time and a lot of talking and a lot of understanding and being receptive to your partner and their needs. So we're going to take a very short break, and then afterwards I would like to kind of discuss a little bit more. I want to build a little bit more on this concept of being able to read into your partner's thoughts and just when they're upset and their actions, and vice versa for them to be able to read into yours. So I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll see you very shortly.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hi, welcome back to the Relationship Podcast. We just talked about a common problem in relationships where there is a lack of communication and one partner feels like the other should be able to read them, or maybe it's both partners, and they're sending out all these signals to each other and neither one is able to read the other's signals. And I'd like to continue talking a little bit more about how you can start to read your partner's signals and how you can kind of portray to them and lead them to start being able to read yours. Now, this is not an end-all to verbal communication. It is simply meant to supplement your own relationship with your partner so that communication can flow more easily between you two. You can acknowledge problems before, they start to become even more problems. A lot of people tend to bottle up before they bring up a problem just to make sure that it is actually a problem and they're not overreacting. But when the other partner sees that there is a problem before the partner brings it up, then it really makes for a faster problem-solving solution. It is much more efficient to make things better in a relationship. And I know a lot of people are like this, but even if you are reluctant to voice things, to be vocal about your own feelings and not to bottle up and to bring up problems, there's good in speaking your mind. No relationship works with one mouth closed and one mouth open, nor does it work with both mouths closed or both open. Communication in a relationship is a back and forth, a seesaw of call and response questions, listening, and answers. And sometimes people are so bad at reading others. I talked about in the last segment that some people just need to have the problem blatantly laid out before them before they can even realize there is a problem. And some people are just so bad at reading. They don't even know when they don't even know when to read others or when they should be reading others. And a lot of the reasons that people choose to bottle up their feelings and just expect their partners to see that they're feeling upset is because they're trying to avoid conflict. But let it be known that a conversation between you two to problem solve and to bring up problems, it's not a fight. This does not equal a fight. It doesn't even equal an argument. If you can speak neutrally and positively to just listen to each other's issues and their own thoughts and feelings on the subject matter, then you can really just come to a means of ends and find an even ground where both of you can feel confident in your relationship. It is important to take into account each other's feelings on a certain problem by keeping an open and neutral mind. And this is not meaning you can't stand your ground. You should stand your ground if you feel confident in your side. But just even if you're confident in your own opinion, listen and be receptive to your partner. Don't just block them off. Don't tell them they're wrong, and just accept that there are other possibilities and there are other thought processes that your partner may have. And if you still are feeling a little uneasy about having this conversation with your partner, if you feel like, maybe it's not necessary, maybe, he will eventually see what I'm trying to tell him in the actions I'm giving him, in the way I'm talking. So what I ask you to do is just look at your relationship in a different way. Like, for example, you both read 2 different languages and you give your partner a book in your language without telling him any of the translations. You're essentially just giving them a book of unfamiliar symbols and, scribbles that they're not going to understand, and they have no tools, they have nothing for them to be able to understand it. There's nothing helping them understand what you're trying to tell them, or, the book that you're trying to give them. However, if you give them the direct translations of a few key terms, and help point out where these translations are in the book, then they'll be able to later depict the book, even if they can even if they can't totally understand every word, word for word, they can't translate it, they'll still have an idea of the context. And on the other side of the spectrum, it's important to keep an eye out for when your partner may be upset as well. They might not have heard the same advice. They might not know to reach out to you, and that you need to know how to understand them, that you need that translation book. So here's a few things that you can do to just kind of keep an eye out for when your partner might be upset. One thing they might do is distance themselves from you. They might distance themselves from, a lot of people around them, maybe because they're upset with you and they feel like that by taking, themselves away from you, they might be punishing you that way. Or maybe even they're just withdrawing themselves because they don't want to, blow up at you, or maybe they don't want to share their problems with you and put those problems onto you. Whatever it might be, there's, it's okay to kind of reach out to them. Just be, calm and patient. Maybe they don't want to reach out right away to you, but if they don't, just let the problem subside and then come back later and discuss, better ways than completely distancing themselves and isolating themselves from you. You might even notice that their mannerisms change and their wording changes. If you're in a texting situation, you might notice the way that they're spelling things or the place of their punctuation, what kind of grammar they're using, or just the words they're using. If they seem more withdrawn, that can kind of lead to the idea that they might be upset. Another idea is even just the simplest change in mood or irrational acting out. It might be because something outside of your relationship is putting stressors on your partner. They might be feeling, strained from work. It might be a family situation. It's best just to, reach out and say, is there anything I can do to help? Like, what happened today? And if they're still, kind of apprehensive about sharing, remind them that you're there for them and it's okay to talk. And later on when it subsides, just make sure to come back, loop around and say, you can always come to me with this. This is something we should be able to talk out together. In the end, being able to read each other's expressions is a mixture of communication and understanding. It's so easy to get heated when you're upset. It's easy to get heated when your partner is upset, but it's best just to look into these things as something that you can both overcome together, and that you're willing to take the time out of your day to help your partner overcome, whether it's a problem within your relationship or outside of it. And when it is in your relationship, be sure not to get defensive or just to get, don't feel hurt if your partner brings a problem to you, because it's not something that they're trying to make you feel bad about. It's essentially something they're trying to do to make the overall relationship work out better and more smoothly. And you can start to promote conversation and communication within your relationship when you are having these problems by doing it yourself. Coming home from a hard work day, you might want to, just be quiet, just to keep to yourself, to be crabby or cranky. But even if those things are going to happen, as long as they're going to happen, be sure to tell your partner, like, this is what happened today, and I'm upset, and that's why I'm acting like this, because this is what I do when I'm upset. I get quiet when I'm upset. I get easily annoyed when when I've been stressed out for a couple days. And that makes it so that your partner will have an easier time just kind of understanding what's going on when you start acting different all of a sudden. And it leaves less of the question of, what the heck, what did I do? Or should I even bring this up? Is this even, my place to talk? Or is it, is there even a problem? Because so many people have such a hard time reading, or they might be so conflicted with other things inside their own head, their own problems going on in life. And especially in those relationships where one talks about it or where neither partner talks about it, they're so used to keeping the problems to themselves that they're thinking about their own problems, and they're not even realizing that they need to be concerned about their partner's problems, because to them, there was never a problem in the first place. They've never brought up a problem. So why should they be looking out for one? So in the end, the best way to start this, this process of understanding each other and without that verbal communication, not that it's going to completely take away verbal communication, but it will start to promote the ideas of, watching out for the other, watching their attitudes and their mannerisms, and they can start to understand or get hints at when you might be upset or when something might be bothering you. So coming up, we are going to get a little frisky talking about the science behind lingerie. I will see you after a very short break.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
In our previous segment, we discussed how you can try to get on a psychic level with your partner. That is, reading each other's mannerisms and expressions to tell when something might not be quite right with either them as individuals or within the relationship. But now we are going to talk about, as promised, the science behind lingerie. And it seems like quite a crazy topic. What does science and lingerie have to do with each other? Well, it has to do with both science and psychology. But if you think about it, what a crazy idea. Let's have women dress up in all these, very revealing, very elaborate and dainty garments, and then it's supposed to arouse their partner and get them excited for sex. But what is it that drives that excitement? And it's just such a crazy concept, right? Well, today I learned that the lingerie industry has kicked up to be a $15 billion industry. Wow. Who knew panties could be so successful? There are so many mixed surveys as to why women wear lingerie. There's even the idea that this is all just, a big corporate scheme trying to advertise this to women to, just so they can sell their own products, and so that, people can make extra money off of these special undergarments, because they're supposed to elicit, a higher sex drive, a more sensual experience. And And there are mixed surveys as to why women wear lingerie. Sometimes it's to boost their own confidence, and sometimes for the sheer augmentation of lust that spurs in their partner from these lacy garments. And many couples have actually expressed that lingerie is completely useless. With a common phrase, it's just going to be torn off right away anyways. But it is not that the lingerie is the show itself. It is actually the idea that it accentuates the female body. And it's actually quite a feat to pull off. There's a lot of, research that has to be done to kind of find the right colors, the right textures, just the right thing for the woman's appearance, the tones that are in their skin, their hair, and then, just for the overall mood that you and your partner are looking for within your private time. And it's truly difficult for women to find lingerie they'll like and that they'll feel good and feel comfortable in. As someone who has been gaining weight healthily, I have worn it less and less just because I feel less happy with how it fits to my body now as opposed to before. So as a woman, it actually takes, some picking and choosing. You got to be kind of choosy with what you're going to have for lingerie just so that it's something that both, that will set the mood for you and your partner, that will arouse them, and that will also make you feel good and that you'll feel confident and comfortable in. And lingerie is kind of an interesting concept because it has so many different attributes to it that changes what it becomes on the person, what kind of experience you're about to have. There are different colors. These colors can exemplify a certain skin tone, or it can exemplify a hair color or eye color. There are different textures to suggest different types of moods, like lace for daintiness, silk for luxury and sensuality, maybe even leather for something a little bit more intense or aggressive. There are so many different ways you can go about picking and choosing this, the lingerie that you're about to wear that you'd like to pick out for your partner, and it can just set a completely different mood depending on what you choose. But there is something about it, and many women have expressed this in different studies and reports, but there is something about it that wearing it under unsuspecting clothes in public feels so empowering and just a little bit scandalous. And let's face it, underwear is so mundane. We've been wearing it our whole life and will be wearing it for the remainder of it. Can't wait for granny panties. But when you wear lingerie, what's underneath your clothes marks an event, something exciting, something to look forward to. And not only is it empowering and exciting for us women, men get so turned on when they see their significant other feeling confident and sexy and empowered and beautiful in their own bodies. Whether, they too will feel as if this lingerie is comparable to an event, whether or not they are growing increasingly exciting with the knowledge of what's underneath your clothing, or whether you surprise them at the end of a long day and they're hit with a, "You've been wearing that the whole time?" How daring it seems. So it appears that lingerie's superpowers come from the feeling it gives you as a woman and how that reflects on your partner, and, just the feeling you get from wearing it, just the confidence. It's empowering. You feel good about yourself, and that just really makes for a more spicy and sexual time in the bedroom. And there's another part where it's, the partner that sees you in this lingerie, they're going to think it's something that you did for them. You took the time out of your day, you took the thought to actually dress up in this very complicated, because they know they're the ones taking it off. They know how complicated it is with all those straps and hooks and wires, but they just, the feeling that somebody did that for you and they went through all that trouble and, they bought something extra special maybe, it's an overwhelming sense of appreciation that they'll feel, and it'll just make them more willing and more wanting to reciprocate that gift to you. And in our adulthood, it can be kind of fun to go out and, just kind of try to buy something new to dress up in, something to surprise your partner with. And it can just be an experience for both of you that really really can change your relationship and really can create kind of an event. It's like a holiday almost, you know? And it's something just kind of exciting for both of you to take part in. And if you don't really believe in the idea of lingerie, it's similar to the idea of, you know, when you have a date night out, you know, it could be a special occasion. It could just be, you know, a day out of the week where you choose to do something different and to do something extra special. But either way, you know, you go to a nice restaurant, you order something you usually wouldn't, you have one more glass of wine than you usually would. And, you know, it's similar to that where you just take, you know, you take the extra steps, you do a little bit more, and it's an event to be excited for. It's something different. It's a good way to, you know, kind of switch things up and just to create a little bit more spice to life. And actually, in my research, there was a study that showed this visual addition is seen in other mammals. That is that, you know, that visual extraness of the lingerie, that, you know, sexual accessory. And I actually discovered, and I came across upon an experiment done on male rats by Gonzalo R. Quintana Zunino. I hope I said that right. You can look this up yourself. They were allowed to mate with female rats, all dressed up in their own version of tiny little lingerie, which is little rat jackets. Just jackets, nothing more. And later, those same male rats were placed individually with two female rats, one with the jacket and then one without. And the male rats almost always picked to mate with the female rat with their little rat lingerie. And it's because, you know, they think it's because they started to correlate the change in accessory, the change in visual appearance to, you know, a preempt to sex. It meant that, you know, once they saw that meant, okay, I'm going to have sex with them. So a final thought behind the science behind lingerie is just it's kind of similar to the Pavlovian theory, and that is the idea that objects or events can, you know, trigger a conditioned response. So there is actually scientific reasoning behind lingerie and why it works so well, and that is that it boosts confidence in women and thus allowing them to have more confidence in their sexuality and their performance during sex. And it also, you know, their confidence triggers a response with their partner. Feeling their confidence just makes them feel good. It makes them supportive and want to support them. And also, you know, the Pavlovian theory, it's, you know, it looks good and it reminds them that, okay, it's time for sex, so we're going to look at this lingerie and then we're going to take it off. So next time you think lingerie is useless or part of a corporate scheme, remember the rats. Remember the rats. It's primal, people. Coming up next, we're going to go over the 5 binge-worthy Netflix series for you and your honey to watch during quarantine. Coming up next.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the Relationship Podcast. We just talked about the science behind lingerie and in what ways it empowers women and turns on men. Now I have for you a list of my carefully selected and carefully researched top 5 series for you and your Netflix and chill buddy to watch during your quarantine days. Or anytime, for that matter. First up on our list at number 5, we have Better Call Saul. This classic spin-off of the original Breaking Bad series is set prior to the events of Breaking Bad in the early 2000s, Albuquerque, New Mexico. We follow the stories of 2 unorthodox characters who fates run into each other time and time again. The show features Jonathan Banks, Rhea Seehorn, and Bob Odenkirk as Jimmy McGill, a small-time lawyer whose love for coworker Kimmy Wexler mixes with his desire for success and money and an ongoing love-hate relationship with his brother. We also get to explore the dangerous world of the cartel in Mike's story, who is played by Jonathan Banks, a fantastic actor, so good at his job and just perfect for the part. We get to see the dangerous world of the cartel and the issues that arise with being part of it. And we just get to watch Jimmy on this life roller coaster of just on top of things, and then he's at the bottom of his life again. And he's an ex-con man, so it makes it really interesting that he ended up on the justice side of the law. And it's interesting to see where he'll go next, especially if you've seen the original Breaking Bad. You'll definitely enjoy this series a lot. Even I've heard a lot of people say, and I totally agree with this, that it's even better than Breaking Bad. So definitely check it out if you have seen that, or it's just something, you know, you don't have to watch it. You don't have to watch Breaking Bad as a precursor. Definitely just check it out if you're interested in, you know, kind of funny, kind of terrifying, either gang or true crime dramas. Not true crime, fake crime, but, you know. Number 4 on my list, I have an ultimate I can't call it a cliche, but I can say that a lot of people have seen at least one season of this. And if you haven't, or if you've only seen one season of it, I highly recommend you find a new season and one that works for you. Because American Horror Story is like one of the best shows to watch with your significant other. It's scary, it's suspenseful, it's kind of, you know, creepy. It definitely makes you want to huddle together in the middle of the night. And, you know, it's kind of sexual, so if you're into that kind of thing, it'll definitely, you know, spice up some moments. But if you and your partner are interested in the strange and the horrifying, you'll have quite the freak fest if you dig into any of the American Horror Story seasons. They are individually wrapped gifts of terror. You'll follow the stories of different themes and timelines through the very twisted worlds and minds of Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk, the creators of the show. You can take your pick from an array of diverse settings consisting of the first season, which is Murder House. It's the story of a family who moves into a house with quite a bit of history and a very dark past. And the habitants are just destined to a terrible fate who live there. The second season is Asylum, the tale of how a reporter gets mixed up into this crazy and unjust world of a 1960s mental asylum. Totally crazy, definitely worth a watch. The third one, it's my absolute favorite. It's a take on the survival of modern witchcraft and how it might be preserved in the secrecy of, you know, the world today, and what dangers might come around with defying the laws of witchcraft. The fourth season, Freak Show, is a circus-themed traveling show that follows a number of chilling histories for each of the cast members of the Freak Show. The fifth season is Hotel. If you are a fan of Lady Gaga, you might enjoy the dark story of the hotel she preserves, or her character preserves, and the price those pay to stay there. Honestly, this one I wasn't even brave enough to finish. It just kind of freaked me out. But if you're into like the, you know, if you really love Lady Gaga, you're going to love this. But if you're kind of into the freaky, kind of the very chilling, very creepy stuff, you and your partner are going to love this. There are other seasons, but I recommend dipping your toes into one of these before diving into the following seasons, such as Roanoke, Cult, Apocalypse, and the most recent 1984. But regardless of which episode or which season you choose, I promise that by the end of the first episode you watch of that season, you will be clinging to each other in fear, and hopefully you won't have to spend the night alone. Number 3 is, you guys are going to kill me, it's The Bachelor. Now, I know it seems cliche, but when you get into it, you can actually have a lot of fun with your partner watching this series. You might actually find yourself cheering on the same contestant, or maybe even competing against each other, pulling bets and coming up with excuses for someone to get kicked off the show. I highly recommend for those couples who love a little bit of competition, a little bit of silly drama in their lives that isn't about them. They get to take a break from the dramas of their own life and actually experience it in somebody else's. So I highly recommend cuddle up with a bowl of popcorn and maybe even end up launching kernels of war at each other too. Number 2 on my list, I have Community. If you haven't heard of Community, it is like 2 steps above The Office, 1 step above Parks and Recreation. Sorry if I started any fights there. So maybe you and your partner aren't really the serious type. Maybe you just want a really good laugh. Well, if that sounds like you, then join the Community. No, literally start watching Community on Netflix. Filmed in 2009, it has some great throwback moments, like flip phones, and a cast ranging from ages past retirement to literally fresh out of high school. You will be rolling out of your chairs as you enjoy the chaotic and hysteric atmosphere of Greendale Community College, where anything is possible. And when I say anything, I mean anything. Join the Spanish group with Jeff, Britta, Shirley, Annie, Pierce, Troy, and Abed on all of their crazy and fun community college adventures. You'll also find some very familiar faces, such as Chevy Chase, Ken Jeong, and Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino. If you are ready to crack up at the obscure activities that this Spanish study group winds themselves into, then get your butts on the couch and start watching ASAP. Okay, finally, number 1. On my number 1 series to watch on Netflix, if you are a couple and you are staying home and staying safe, that is The Good Place. This show will have you questioning your morals and each other's morals, have you hanging in suspense, and possibly competing in a wild goose chase as you try to figure out what the heck is going on. All of that while cracking up uncontrollably. This show transpires out of this world and into whatever the afterlife may be. This show teaches compassion, love, friendship, and the idea that everything may not always be as it seems. Following the past and present of Eleanor Shellstrop, she has to make her way after passing in the good place. The only problem is she has no idea how she got there after living as one of the laziest, most unfriendly, and selfish human beings on Earth. Can she fake her way through an eternity in the good place, or will her cover be blown by those she's forced to interact with? If you're willing to watch something kind of more, humorous and just fun and lighthearted, this is the show for you and your partner. It's so easy to watch. It's easy to get sucked into, and you'll just, hours later, you'll be like, what time is it? And that's the kind of feeling you want when you're stuck in quarantine all day and you get to binge Netflix with your Netflix and chill buddy or your partner. Maybe it's not Netflix and chill. Maybe it's just Netflix and Netflix. I don't know. But I hope you enjoyed my top 5 quarantine Netflix and chill series to binge and to stay home and stay safe in. I know a lot of these are maybe things that you've seen before, so try out one of them, especially like American Horror Story. If you've only seen one season, try just the first or second episode of a couple different seasons because all of them are so different. And especially Community, it just is such a fun show. You can find yourself enjoying it in different seasons. So with that, I say to you, happy TGIF, have fun out there, make good choices, and remember to keep your social distancing. And we will be back Monday with more talk on relationships. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Relationship Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would be so grateful if you could please subscribe if you haven't already and write some nice words in that review box. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more fun and intriguing relationship content in the meantime. Thank you again. Stay home, stay safe out there, and enjoy your weekend.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.